For this, your comments have covered a wide range. Could you just be concise into what your question is to me?
Well, regarding the guidance,
Yeah.
we have no guidance.
On what though?
On how to deal with parents who exercise their right to opt out.
You want guidance on how to deal with parents?
Well, do we have the authority to approve their right to opt out? Is that within our responsibility as superintendent?
I'm going to tell you what the law says. I think, frankly, dealing with parents on any activity is a question of personal relations at a school level. But what the law says is as follows. One, there's a state law that says parents must send their child to school. Two, there's a federal law saying all kids must count in the accountability system, and there are state regulations saying that the way that we do that is we award a 0 if a child does not participate on the test for the school. For any activity in the school, the principal and the parent should make a determination as to what the appropriate activity is for the child on any given day. And if the parent says that the child should opt out, the principal should talk to the parent, should explain, should understand. And if the parent says, I still want this, then the principal should accommodate.
Okay, and as it relates to the 0 in the cume folder, and parents being told that if the child is a non-participant, that they won't be considered for beta, you know, I'm sure this is happening. I don't think these parents are making this up. So again, are you prepared to or planning to send out correspondence to address these concerns?
I just gave you our policy. At the state level, it's as follows. There is a federal law saying that all kids have to count in the accountability system. There's a state law saying parents must send their children to school. Our way in the accountability system of addressing the opt-out situation historically for many years has been to award no points for that student. When a parent comes to a school with his or her child and says, I don't want them to participate in this activity, be it testing or anything else, homework, athletics, a certain curriculum assignment, the principal has the responsibility to talk to the parent, to explain the rationale, and if the parent still doesn't want the child to participate, then the principal should make appropriate accommodations. I don't know how to be more specific than that, because speaking to any individual circumstance of something that was said to somebody in a system of 700,000 kids just is not the level at which statewide policy deals.
Okay, go ahead, Ms.
I have a question. I think the confusion is, Superintendent White, that we do have a momentum that a lot of parents are beginning to understand their rights, and they're opting their children out of the PARCC assessment. And I think the biggest concern, there are three. One, if the student opt out, will the district and or the school be penalized? Because the student will receive a 0. Two, if I have a student in the 4th grade and he or she does not take the exam, and by the time they get into the 6th grade, I may want to put them in maybe honors classes or Great Scholar program or French Immersion program based on his or her grades and test scores. Now we know that when a student takes an exam and a parent wants to put them into honors classes, that they don't look at that year. They have to go back into the other year, meaning that if I'm in the 4th grade, going to the 5th grade, they're going to look at my 3rd grade scores, not my 4th grade scores. But if I'm in the 4th grade, moving to the 6th grade, they're going to look at those 4th grade test scores. But if I decided not to take the test and I don't have a score and it's 0, how would it impact my child being able, because they look at your grades, they look at your test scores to make that determination in regards to what level you will be on, whether it be advanced classes, honors classes, etc. So I think those are three issues. One, the districts feel that the parents have this right, and the parents opt out, then my district receives a 0, and then I'm going to be penalized. Two, if the student opt out, and the school receive a 0 for that student, that's going to account into my school performance score, and that's going to impact me. 3, if I'm a parent and I have this right and I want to opt out, and in the future I want to place my child in advanced placement classes or honors classes, and I have a 0, what data, what would the school use to make that determination? Because you have to look at the academics of the child and the test scores of a child.
So just to the last one, I'm going to answer them in order. I'm going to go backwards. In the last one, you voted for the policy last year that says that we're not going to use standardized test scores this year in making promotion decisions. So that policy you have already voted for, and it was put on the books, and it says that local school systems this year should use all of the information at their disposal to create their own policies in their pupil progression plans to address issues of promotion. Secondly, with respect to the school performance scores, we have a long-standing policy dating back more than a dozen years. It's been used every year on standardized testing. This year, no different. It just says that as per federal law, which requires every kid to be counted in the accountability system, a kid not taking the test generates a 0 as a score that goes into a large average within that school. Now, at the same time, per Mr. Romer's motion, you are requesting of us a report, because the reality is we don't know how many kids we have participating in the test this year versus not participating in the test. So let's deal in facts. I'll just take an example. Dr. Beebe, how many opt-out forms have you received in St. Martin? 2. 2, okay, so that's 2. So maybe a different parish has 22. Maybe a different one has 200. Who knows? Let's get a report per Mr. Romer's motion, and then let's come back and revisit the policy. Remember, school performance scores will not be generated until the next fall. 8 months from now. We have 8 months to make whatever considerations we need per report of the reality, whether it's 2 in St. Martin Parish or whether it's 22 or 200 somewhere else. Let's look at the numbers, and then let's come back and you'll have a report.
And Superintendent White, I will agree with you on that, but for my last question, I don't think you probably understood.
Okay.
We did vote on a policy that promotion, the test would not determine if a child would be promoted.
Yes, ma'am.
But that's not the question. The question is, if I'm a student and I'm in the 4th grade and my parent decides to opt me out of the testing, once I get in the 6th grade and I'm in middle school, okay, and I want to be in advanced placement classes, they're not going to take those 5th grade scores. They're going to look at my 4th grade scores. But I don't have a score because as a parent had the right to opt out. That's because they can't look at the 5th grade scores because they're not in time for the school to make a determination. So they have to go back to the 4th grade scores. You understand? That's my point. So that's one of the issues that the parents are articulating when we was in Lafayette. Number 2, I agree with your statement in regards to Mr. Romer to bring a summary draft. So I would like to, I don't know if it's appropriate time, if Mr. Romer feels that we need to come back and have a summary draft to look at determination of how many kids opt out in the districts, in the schools. Let's just put a moratorium on the school performance scores. Let's not issue any letter grades. Let's not issue any school performance scores until we get it right and then move forward for the next year or the year after next year.
Ms. Barrios. Lee Barrios, retired teacher. First, I want to address the federal role in this because that's always a threat regarding everything, it seems. It's held over our heads to do something that this board or this superintendent wants. Superintendent, you said that federal law says all kids must count, and that's absolutely correct. That's why we have codes for the tests. Every student that is in that school must have a test coded, whether they take the test or not. This state, because there is no opt-out provision, has no code for opt-out. It does have an absence code. You all need to look at that. The reason why every kid must count is to prevent schools who have 100 students from sending in 75 test scores. The 25 that weren't taken for whatever reason must have a code with an excuse. Okay? So there is no federal law that said every kid must take the test. The federal government addresses accessibility. That's a civil rights issue. The test must be made accessible to every student. Education services must be made accessible. They are not forced to accept it. There is no federal opt-out provision for or against. In fact, this board, approval of this board, the superintendent has invited federal control over us in his waiver. I participants. Also, because ELA and math are core competencies, student performance in these subjects will receive double the weight given to social. So in fact, you're saying, Superintendent White, and you're telling the government that you have decided that schools will get not just 1 0, but 2 for students who opt out. It is not a federal requirement. And I ask this board to consider that. You promised, actually it was a motion that was passed, accepted by the SACS committee, that you would look at this 0% issue. You didn't say when. Okay, and yet in a newspaper article I read yesterday, you said students who opt out receive a 0. That is absolutely not true. It's statistically impossible for a student to get a 0 on a test. If they did, it would be rendered invalid. Just like close to 1,000 tests were rendered invalid in 2013. And those zeros were assigned to those. They did receive a code, however, when it's sent into the federal government. You also said it's up to systems to decide whether they might hold those children back. That's absolutely not true because you've set a moratorium on pupil progression this year. So, but these are messages that our districts are getting, and these are reasons that there's so much confusion, and I ask this board today to clarify some of these issues.